Hi, everyone. Thank you for attending the webinar. Here we have Andrew Fish with us to talk about your art, your life, and finding a balance. So let's jump right in. First of all, let me introduce Andrew Fish and myself. If you're not familiar, I'm the founder of Creative Living Works, and I'm an artist and designer and crafter. And I've been working as an artist in Somerville for the past 10 years, and I've been exhibiting locally and continuing to pursue my art and grow as an artist. So I have some advice to give on the matter. And then Andrew Fish, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Andrew Fish. I'm a Boston-based painter, and I've been in the city for about 10 years, and I have a studio at Vernon Street Studios in Somerville. We do open studios a couple times a year. I'm teaching a class at Mass Art in the spring, so I'm involved in education, and I work at a summer camp during the summers as well up in Vermont on the arts. I'm a figurative artist. I do representational figurative artwork, and my work can be seen online. I think there's a link to my website somewhere here.
Yes, and then I also included a example of each of our pieces too. So you can kind of see, actually we're both figurative, but in a very different way.
That's right.
I include fabrics and such, so I chose a piece that actually does show up on online as three-dimensional. I have a few behind me that you probably can't tell are three-dimensional because they're on top of fabrics. But Andrew also works with some fabrics in his pieces, so we do have that in common as well.
This is true.
So stick around to the end because I'm going to give a link to download a worksheet, because part of this is talking about how to build a plan going forward. We're approaching the new year, and the path to figuring out life and art is not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. So this worksheet will help you define your own personal goals.
So yeah, making a living as a contemporary artist is, it's not impossible, but it definitely is, you have to be creative about how it would work best for you. I personally have found different ways to make it work over the years. I've had full-time jobs, I've had part-time jobs, and I've been able to be a full-time artist. And in all of those iterations, there's a lot of attention that has to be paid to whether or not you're designating enough time in the studio, thinking about the work outside of the studio, making sure that you protect your time as an artist so that you can do the work that you want to do. It does take a lot of self-discipline and motivation, as it says in the slide. And this idea of surrounding yourself with others that inspire you, I think is important, because community is always a key element to success. Having supportive people around you, and also people that will challenge you, people that understand what you're trying to do and are creative in their own rights and might offer insights into what you're doing. You want to make a lot of opportunities for yourself, so find things to get involved in. And there's, you want to just have a good life, regardless of the torture of your studio time. I mean, I think we all beat ourselves up as creative people because we never do enough, or we're never working enough. But I think that you want to keep yourself happy by just making sure you have a good life. I have a painter friend in town who has this great saying about artists that are using their time to make their work and to try to make a living off their work. And he says, if you're just barely scraping by, you're doing really well. And I like that. I like that idea.
It's true. I came up with a little graphics for this slide because, a lot of other professions, they call it climbing the ladder of success. But with an art career, it looks more like you're traveling in Italy or down winding roads, and you don't know, you can't measure success in the same way. A lot of people, when I tell them I'm an artist, the first thing they ask is, oh, how many paintings do you sell? Or like, what do you make? And I like to get away from measuring success just by dollars. I know money is important, and that's how we all get by. But I recommend finding different ways to measure your success as an artist.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The idea of compartmentalizing, this talk sort of came out of this idea of work-life balance, and what does it mean for work-life balance? We hear this a lot, and there's been a lot of research. There's been a lot of articles written about this. That there's a fallacy to it, that you really can't compartmentalize work and life, or your creative pursuits and your life, because by separating them, you're denying the fact that they're both a part of who you are. And there's a great quote I want to share that was published on Forbes, of all places, last March, by a woman named Alyssa Orsler. And the quote is, "Balance is indeed a key concept of life, but the nearly ubiquitous concept of work-life balance is a dangerous one. The harsh binary framework creates a false separation of church and state from the get-go, in this case, pitting the professional and personal against each other." And I think that that's important to think about, because if you are compartmentalizing yourself, there's a tendency to want to do that because you're protecting one over the other, but you're also risking the idea of having imposter syndrome, because you're never fully engaged in what you're doing, because you there's a part of you that you're not sharing. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is another thing that could be individual for certain people, whether or not to what degree they compartmentalize. But I think that it's important to not do that as much as possible. Mm-hmm. I guess one of the things about I have a lot of different artist friends around different cities all over the place, and I have some friends who their coworkers have no idea that they're artists, and their work, and we talk about art, and then I may meet them somewhere where they're with a coworker, and they're just baffled at the idea that this person is an artist. And I think that my friend is not only gypping himself of that experience of being the artist that he is, but he's gypping his coworkers, and he's gypping his friends as well, because it's a part of who he is. Mm-hmm. One of the things about protecting your studio time, I think you want to be able to make agreements with your family and with your partners about being able to go into the studio and get the work done when you want to get it done. And I think too often what we do as artists is we wait till the end of the day, or the end of our list of errands that we have to run, to focus on our art. And I think that can be difficult when we're not protecting it, or we're not letting it be the entity that it is. So for instance, I think that if you say, oh, I'm going to go to the studio today, but first I'm going to go buy my groceries, and first I'm going to go do this, and first I need to do that, by the end of the day you haven't made it to the studio. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, you're denying yourself this drive, and you need to make sure that you do that. Think of it as work, the same way you wouldn't do that with your job. You wouldn't run your errands first and then go to work. You go to work. And I think that your studio time and your artistic pursuits have to be seen that way too.
Absolutely.
I don't know, Danielle, is this a schedule? Do you have difficulty getting into the studio?
Yeah, so I think I'm with you. You have to prioritize it, and you have to make it clear to your family and friends or whoever that this is as important as their job, because a lot of times people do assume, oh, that's just your art. There's that presumption that it's, you're enjoying it, so it's not as much as a priority. But if you find a way, like I actually, when I'm on the weekends painting at my studio, it's my husband's time to play Xbox. So we've come to that agreement where he gets to do his thing and I do my thing, and it works for us. I don't have kids yet, but I do have this guy. He's sleeping on my lap right now. So he likes to be involved, and that I put in that picture of him as a puppy. He was wanting to eat my paintbrush, but luckily he doesn't get in the way like that anymore. He sleeps underneath my easel. But yeah, I think, if you have kids, have a babysitter or figure out a way that you can be at your studio uninterrupted, because I do hear that from moms that, when they try to do both taking care of the kids and watching it at the same time, they're going to have some trouble. But everybody's different, and that's kind of the overarching theme of this, is that find a solution that works for you.
Mm-hmm. We had a good question that popped up from Rachel, and then it disappeared, but I think what she was commenting on when I was talking about this friend of mine who's a really brilliant artist whose coworkers don't know that he is, and she was curious if he might be worried that they wouldn't take him seriously in his day job. And I think that's a really good point, because I think we have that fear, and that's why I refer to imposter syndrome. It's like when you are at work, you have been hired to do a certain job, and you're supposed to be a certain professional in that area. And if suddenly, you're telling everybody about the opening you're having of your work, or that you're working on this great painting and you just have to talk about it, they may think you're not doing your job. And then likewise, when you're at your opening and you're trying to be the artist representing your work, you may feel a bit of an imposter because, you're actually your day job is this other thing. And I understand that fear, but I think this is your life, and you have to, people actually find it more interesting. I remember I had a job, I did technology for many years, and as a technology professional, I was expected to sort of have certain goals in my career, and what I found was, as soon as I let people know that I was interested in the arts and that I myself made art, they got more interested. And then this idea of creativity suddenly applied to what I was doing at work, and people thought differently about the decisions I made or the things that that I presented to the bigger group, because I was a creative person. I don't think it would ever hurt you to admit and celebrate the fact that you're an artist around your coworkers.
I agree.
Ah, yes, Harrison Ford. So I just wanted this picture up here so that we could talk about Star Wars. No, I'm kidding. What do these guys have in common? Harrison Ford, Mark Rothko, and Jeff Koons. And what they have in common is that while they were building up their career, while they were pursuing their passions and their dreams, they had other jobs. And Harrison Ford was a carpenter. He was he had gone to Hollywood to be an actor. He was getting these small roles in commercials, but he wanted to be a real film actor. But he thought that if he had a skill, he could supplement his income and then not have to take some of those smaller roles that he didn't want to take. And so he became a carpenter and ended up building a theater for Francis Ford Coppola, who had then brought him to George Lucas to read for the part of Han Solo. But he was never actually auditioning. He was just working with the actors that were auditioning. And then, of course, that was the beginning of his whole career. He'd been in, I think, a George Lucas film before that, too. But he was a carpenter, and he pursued carpentry because he liked the practicality of it. He liked the science behind it. And he was very good at it, and he made a good living. And he could have continued to be a carpenter, but his real passion was to be an actor. And Mark Rothko, when he was in New York, when he was growing up his family immigrated to New York, but when he was younger, he worked at a Jewish community center teaching to elementary school kids. So he was a teacher, but he did focus on art. He was teaching art, but still it was, he had this day job to supplement his income. But he never lost sight of the fact that his real dreams were to be taken very seriously in his painting.
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff Koons, aside from being a guard at MoMA, and you'll know a lot of artists become either guards at museums or they work as installers or art handlers. What Jeff Koons did was he spent some time as a commodities broker on Wall Street. So and it kind of says a lot about Jeff's approach to art too, and how he's making these luxury objects that are worth a lot of money. But that was he acquire these skills, but he was also doing this day job, which is pretty intense. I mean, I've never done commodities trading, so I have no idea what that's like. But for somebody who has, artistic meanings, to do that during the day, and then make sure that there's time for their work after, I think is a good example of all of us. So I think these three characters really just illustrate that we, regardless of what we're doing during the day, we have to maintain our artistic output.
Absolutely. And, the other thing they have in common as you're talking about each of those jobs is that they're not the kind of jobs that would take away from their artistic feelings, from their inspiration. I guess Harrison Ford, he's building his muscles while he's building his sights, so he's keeping in shape. But the other ones too, like Koons, you said he probably got inspiration for his subject matter and his works from what he was doing. And so if you can do that from the gigs or the jobs that you're doing to bring in the money, then that is great. What isn't great is when you're draining yourself and you're overworking yourself to the point where you're not able to create. And that's happened to me personally before. I took a nannying job. And I was like, this is perfect. I'll be out by 3 when the mom comes home.
Yeah.
I was dead. Every afternoon I had to nap, and I'm not like somebody that naps. For some reason, for me, that wasn't the right fit. But again, it could be perfect for someone else. But for me, it was like I wasn't getting any work done during that time. So try to find something that complements your creativity. And
Yeah.
I mentioned a little bit before, but I think it's really important to take the pressure off selling your work. I try to consider it a bonus if I get a painting sold, but if you put the pressure on having to sell X number of pieces, you're going to start shifting the way that you paint or the way that you make your work, and that might be okay for some people. Maybe you already have a following. Maybe you're in a rhythm where you're selling and it's going great. But I think especially when you start off or even for the whole term of your painting or your art career, if you have something else that can pay bills, then I think that's the sweet spot to be in, because you're not reliant 100% on selling.
That's right. Yeah, it's also, just to add to that, I think it's a good idea to, if you're doing a day job or you're doing work that is helping supplement your income, it's helping provide funds for art supplies and to even pay for a studio or whatever, that job has to end at a certain time during the day so that the rest of your life can happen. So I think it's important to make sure that you again sort of protect your time after work. Maximizing your studio time. This is one of my favorite ideas. When you can't be in your studio during the day, or you can't work on your painting or your artwork during the day, it's always good to think about what you're going to do when you finally can do it, whether it's when you get to the studio, or you're working on a piece one day and you have to go to work or you have to travel. And I think taking photos of what you're working on is incredibly important. Just always document what you're doing so that you can continue to look at it even when you're not in front of it. And I would take that a step further and encourage people to download and use digital tools that allow you to sketch out ideas or to keep working on a piece even when you're not in front of the piece. And the picture in the slide is of an iPad application called Art Studio. And it's an application I use all the time. I'll take a photo of a painting I'm working on and I'll bring it into to Art Studio and I'll sketch out some different ideas. And because it's digital, you can save that version and then bring it back to the original, make a different variation on your ideas. And so you can have, many sketches, many ideas of what you're going to do with the piece when you do get back to the actual piece. So these are some tools that you can use. I think, Photoshop is a great one, and any drawing app that you can put on your phone or on a tablet. The other thing is social media. I think social media is a really nice way to share the work, but also to sort of get some feedback. And you don't have to sort of, if you're sheepish about what you're making and you don't want to put it in front of everybody to get feedback, you could pick one or two people that you send an image around to and just sort of get some feedback that way. And this helps you engage in the discourse of contemporary art, of your own practice, and it helps you think about the work that you're creating and how to work on it when you can't actually be in front of it. What I used to do is I wouldn't waste a minute when I got to the studio. When I finally made it to the studio at the end of my day or on the weekend or whenever I could actually get in there, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't waste any time. I went in and did the work, and then I might take some time to sit back and look at it. But I didn't waste any time at all, and I felt like that was important to do. Danielle, I think we lost you. Oh, well, I might be on my own here, folks. Well, hopefully she'll come back. But setting a schedule and sticking to it, making sure that when you do get into the studio, you are creating the work, and having these tools to use. I'm trying to think of some other good tools that you might be able to use. If you're not on Instagram, I would encourage you to do that, because not only can you look at a lot of work that's coming out, but you can post work, you can share work, you can talk about work, other social media. Yeah, there you are.
Sorry, but I lost you. So I ran downstairs to closer to the connection.
Oh.
Let me grab a chair.
And
so were you talking about studio time?
Yeah, we're talking about different tools to use to do the work outside of the studio, and then making sure that you know what you're going to do when you get to the studio, so that you're not wasting time. And I feel like all that preparation before you can get back to the thing you're working on is really important. And it also makes you feel like you're being productive. If you don't give your artwork any focus for days on end, then you're going to feel kind of bad about it. And so if you're giving it attention, either by sharing it with people or working on it in a digital format, or just making a list or preparing what you're going to do when you do finally get to the studio, I think that really helps. I think that goes a long way.
Definitely. One more thing on that. I like to time myself. I don't know if anyone else does, but I've talked about this before, that I use a program called FreshBooks, and it's free. Well, it costs money if you're doing clients. If you're doing it for clients, which I do also, but you can create a free account and just time yourself, and you can itemize all the things that you do, and that kind of helps keep it a priority, that the time you're spending at your studio is just as valuable as the other times that you spend doing things.
Nice.
So getting your artwork noticed, showing often is really the biggest part of that, because if you're in your studio all the time making, which is great, and you should be doing a lot of that too, but no one will actually get to see your work. And so trying to take advantage of getting into shows, group shows are a great way. If you keep your eye out for calls to art, there's some great websites out there. Creative Living Works, I actually do keep a posting. I try to keep my eye out for opportunities that would be good. Do make sure that they're reputable. So Art Design List is usually pretty good, and wulu.org. But there are always some out there. If they're asking for a large sum of money, then you might want to reconsider. I say nothing more than, $30 or something, but decide on a goal and a budget that you say, I'm going to apply to X number of shows. I've got the worksheet at the end with a slot for that, but decide on how many you're going to apply to, and know that if you don't get in, that's okay too. You've applied and you've put yourself out there. Another great way is if you're not getting into these shows and you just want exposure, approach local restaurants, cafes, different kind of unique workspaces, and also identify galleries that show art similar to yours. And then, I wouldn't say stop them, but try to go, often.
There is kind of a courting thing that does have to happen, I think, though, with some of these spaces.
And go and support their other shows. It is a sensitive thing where you don't want to berate them by email or phone or anything like that. But if you subtly work in your way in where they start to remember you, and then you bring up your artwork, I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And show interest in what they're doing as much as you want them to be interested in what you're doing. They recognize that. They know that. And one thing about the juried shows or these open calls, you want to make sure you don't want to waste your money. So you want to make sure that your work is it fits the open call, and also if it's a juror who you respect and admire, or who has a reputation that that's important, and you want to put your work in front of them, those are all good reasons to join the calls. But they add up fast. If if they're $30 a piece and you do 10 of them, I mean, it's a lot of money. So, you want to pick and choose the ones very specifically.
Absolutely. So in the same way that you're courting galleries and going to shows, you're just one person. So if you're going to places that aren't similar to your work, then you're kind of wasting your time in a sense too. Although, definitely see a wide variety of art, but when it comes to getting serious about applying, make sure it's in your alley.
Can I share a link with everybody on this?
Yeah, you can type it right into the chat.
See if I can find it here. Where is it? Because there's a couple other, I think the ones that you listed were really good, but I thought of a couple others that might be good. So I'm going to pop those in there.
Great.
So there's, that didn't format very well, but this one is called Retitle, and this has a lot of international opportunities as well as regional. And then this one, ArtSig, this is the Mass Cultural Council's website. It's a blog, and that's a really great resource. I'm kind of assuming that we're more Massachusetts based, but NYFA is another one that is New York State. I think it's .org. I think it's NYFA.org. But those are some other resources to look for opportunities.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, those are good ones. And so as you're doing your studio time and you're thinking about how your work would fit into a show, and you might be going to some amazing shows where you see solo shows that are really consistent, and there's a reason behind that they got that solo show because their work is consistent and it is a strong body that speaks for itself. And eventually you can be identified by your art, not the other way around where you're showing up everywhere and saying, hey, check out my stuff. They'll see your art somewhere and say, hey, that looks like an Andrew Fish. And so eventually, and these are some of Andrew's paintings right here, and he has a very distinct style, and so I know when I see a piece of his that's an Andrew Fish. And that's a powerful way to have your art be an extension of who you are. And is your artist statement up to date? What is your body of work have to say? And this can be a whole topic of its own, but just to briefly hit on that, make sure, when was the last time that you thought about your artist statement, and make sure it is up to date, at least relevant to the things that you're doing and your artistic brand. So when you get that artist statement up to date, put it on your website. And if you don't have a website, I really highly recommend getting one. There are lots of easy websites where you can just plug in your stuff, or you could hire a web designer. Creative Living Works, I have a whole network of creative professionals, including people that do web design. And make sure you update it often, because it's one thing to have it up there, and people can go, but they see something from 5 years ago that doesn't really represent who you are anymore. Then it's not giving you any benefit. And
and there's two different ways to approach a website. One is like a portfolio to just show your work, and the other is like an information-based one where you post what's happening, news, and that sort of thing. So you want to decide which one's best for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend a combination, because you're working so hard to get your work to look great. You want people to see it. And then if you're working really hard to get into these shows, you want people to know about it, and you want people to go. And another important thing is to have cards on you all the time. We all slip up. I do too. I'm like, oh, I ran out of cards. I don't have one. But that's a missed opportunity if you're talking to someone and they are interested in your work. And again, you're going right in and saying, I'm an artist, and you're owning it, because it is part of who you are. And that happens to me all the time in places that you wouldn't expect. So if you always have them on you, as a girl, I have a lot of purses, so I just always have a bunch in my purses. I don't know if it works for guys like that, but in your wallet.
Yeah, they're in my jacket pockets.
Yeah,
everywhere.
something that you always have on you. And another thing that's important is to try to build an email list. MailChimp is a great one. It's free up to, I think, 1,000 people, maybe more. So there's no excuse not to set that up. It's super easy. And if you have a website, you can have a subscribe button right on there, but also in person, every time you have a show or an open studio event, you put out a book and you ask people to sign their email. So then when you do have a show coming up, not just on your website, but you can send an email and get that out there, because I think you can never start too early for that. So even if you don't feel like you're in a place where you want to market your work heavily, you can always just keep that list and not use it yet. But it's really invaluable to have a set of people that you know already like what you do.
Definitely.
And we touched a little bit on making your own opportunities before. So say you're applying to a bunch of shows and you're not getting in and you're feeling defeated. Get creative and think about, maybe where you're at. I did a show in a square. That's what this photo is, in Union Square in Somerville. And I rolled out a red carpet, and it was, I'd actually gotten my subjects that way too, so it was fitting to have the show there. But I rolled out coat racks that I rented, and I hung my paintings up, and anybody could come by and see. I did coordinate with Somerville on this, and so you may want to do that as well. But maybe not. Maybe just go for a random field and throw up a show, or an abandoned place. I mean, you could really go anywhere with that, and as long as you do check out that you're being safe and legal. But
what happened to guerrilla art?
Yeah, exactly. So residencies. This is another really important way to expand your potential and your art making, and dedicating time to art making. And so there's a wide variety of some that you might have to pay a small fee to stay there, or they may be paying you to stay there, or it might be an even trade. You get to stay there, and you don't have to pay us anything, and we don't expect anything in return. So do your research on which types there are.
Yeah, artist residencies are amazing. I've had really good luck with them. And I think if you don't have, if you are struggling for time in the studio, or you want a chunk of time to really concentrate on a certain body of work, it's so valuable. You go and you can trade, while you're in residency, you can do some work there. A lot of the programs have that supplement, instead of giving them the full amount. But it's a great way to designate time and space to the work.
Definitely, and as long as you're flexible enough, depending on what your job is, or what ties you down, you can go absolutely anywhere. This one I had the photo from is in Australia, and this guy is doing a studio exchange. And I had actually never really heard about that until I was doing some research on this, and that's a really cool concept because I know people do that for vacations, but to do it with your studio and say, I just want to see a new place and, try a different scenery out and experience. It's pretty cool.
Engaging in your artistic community. Yeah, we touched on this a little bit before, but you definitely want to have a group of people that you can count on to talk about the work and share the work, and even as Danielle was saying, getting putting a show together that might be your immediate community of people. As a community, you could find a space and put on a show. But studio visits are really important because I had mentioned sort of doing it digitally, but if you can do it in person, it's even better because you're right in front of the work. But I think you get a lot out of that because people will, they'll either be really frank about something or they will, you can tell what they're thinking a lot of times when they're in front of you about the work. So studio visits are very important. It just helps. And the more studio visits you do, the better you'll be at them because you'll learn to take things with a grain of salt. Like you're not going to implement every idea that everybody throws at you. You'll sort of, some things will resonate with you and other things won't. And I think that's also an important distinction that you'll acquire as time goes on. And teaching and taking workshops, I think, is very important because you take workshops to expand your knowledge of things, and also, it keeps you, I guess there's studies that say it keeps you young, it keeps you from dying when you're when you're learning new things all the time. So taking workshops is great, and then give back and teach a workshop. Do something even through Creative Living Works. You can do a workshop, or I think there's other Skillshare opportunities, or at the local community centers or adult ed centers. If you know how to make an etching, well, that's kind of complicated because you need the acid and all that. But let's say, if you know how to mold something with clay and rubber, like that would be a nice skill to share. So think about doing that kind of thing too. It also helps expand your community. And then going to see exhibitions regularly is really important because it just keeps your brain active and lets you see what's happening. The work that's being shown at the local galleries, as well as the stuff that's being celebrated in the major museums. All of that work is relevant to look at because if you're a creative person and you're making work that's going into that environment as well, or even just in the world of art, it's important to see what else is there.
And it's inspiring. I love going around. I just went over to Andrew's studio, had an open studio. Was it last weekend?
Yeah.
And
weekend. Yeah, the one before this past one. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really great to pop in and see what other people are doing, and it gives you a sense of, we're all discovering where we're going, and this is how someone else is taking it, and there's just a lot of different ways that as artists we're exploring, and it's fun to bounce, inspiration off each other.
Definitely.
And speaking of workshops, Andrew's teaching.
Oh, yeah. It's my class. So I'm doing this class. It's called Digital Drawing, and it's really broadening the idea of drawing to include the preparation of work through digital media. And I talked a little bit about it tonight. And essentially, we're going to create paintings, but while we're making the paintings, we're going to use cameras, phones, iPads, all different kinds of digital tools to assist in the process. And we'll even do some, we'll take something that's analog or tactile, and we'll bring it into the digital realm. We'll work on it, then we'll print it, so then it becomes it goes into the digital realm and then back out into the analog realm. And then we'll work on that some more, and we'll look at scale and color and all these things. So if you're interested in taking this course, it's registration is happening now. It starts January 22nd, I think, or 21st.
Excellent. I just posted the link on there too.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. 21st. And it's at MassArt.
That'll be great. And yeah, so another way to take some workshops and to keep involved and see what other people are doing is on Creative Living Works. And I also promised a worksheet, and I'm going to paste this in here, where you can go and download your PDF to fill in your artistic goals, because like we said, it's different for everybody. And if you can kind of set up in one column what your expectations are and then come back next year and see where you're at, it's a really good way to gauge, and motivate you to prioritize your art. And, so many businesses do that. They're talking about what's our plan for 2016. Well, we should have a plan too, even though we're not, like I said, you're taking the emphasis off the money-making part of it. But there are other ways to kind of see that you're making progress. And yeah, so if anybody is interested too in joining Creative Living Works, you can join as a free member, or you can join as a pro member and access all the courses. If you're a free member, you can buy them a la carte, but I'm going to post a link to sign up. And for those of you on the webinar, a special coupon for today is, what did I do? Art Life. I'll type it in. So you can just type that in at checkout and get 20% off. And I really appreciate everyone joining us. I also want to open up to any questions that you have for me or Andrew in the little chat section. And if you don't have questions, that's okay too. I really appreciate your taking the time, Andrew. It's really, like I said, it's inspiring to just hear other people's success stories and to know, it is possible, even if you're not doing it now, living as a full-time artist, it could be something in your future, and you just need to take it day by day and, do what works for you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I think that, being an artist it's part of your personality. I think people that are drawn to make work, it's a part of you that you can't really deny. So you might as well embrace it and celebrate it and make it a part of the rest of your life.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people are happy to know, especially if they don't know a lot of artists, that they can say that they know, someone who is an artist, and sometimes they're dying to go to shows, but they don't have anyone to go with, and you might find that, people in your life that you didn't expect were interested in art are enthusiasts too.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, great. So everyone have an excellent evening, and thanks for joining in, and happy holidays too.
Happy holidays. Thanks, Danielle.
You're welcome. Good night.
Good night.